Hello, everybody. So I am here with the night quilter. And Katie Wilkin, and she's amazing. And so I really want you will all be super inspired by her story. She is very inspirational. I'm so glad that you're here with us, Kitty. And so I'm going to ask you the question I asked everyone else. What happened in your business? And it show us a resilience of that wouldn't have happened if Corona hadn't happened.
That's a great question. So I am a mom of three young kids primarily. And so when coronavirus first began, it was on the other side of the country. We live in rural Maine. But I still remember those first really uncertain feelings. And so at first, it was mostly an emotional change, that kind of overprotective mom, like, what does this mean for my family, my kids, and my husband and I here, or my parents who are older in New Jersey, where it's much more densely populated. And as part of my coping mechanism, I guess my ingrained coping mechanism, I started thinking and dreaming of trees. I'm an environmental science major by trade, and nature and trees have always brought me peace and been kind of a place to go when I needed to just get away from everything. And so I started sowing trees, which you can see behind me.
Yep.
And that was the start of a new pattern I called Plant Worry, Grow Hope. And so the idea behind that and how it began was I was worrying constantly, thinking about what do we do, what does this mean for us, not knowing the giant toll the pandemic would ultimately take, but
Mhm.
fearing the unknown. And so I started sowing trees. And the idea was that I was planting my worries, trying to sow my worries into these trees and growing hope through something beautiful. And trees are symbolic of life and hope. And so it just evolved from there. As the pandemic went on and got way longer and more serious than any of us imagined, I realized that I wanted to do more. And so when I released this pattern, it's a pattern available in my shop, I decided that 50% of profits forever will go to organizations working to grow hope, whether that's providing mutual aid or working for social justice or to fight homelessness, for food security, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of something that definitely stemmed from that fear and uncertainty of coronavirus and was just further fueled by everything that went on in our country over the summer. And so far, we've been able to donate over $1,000 to various organizations as a result of the sale of this pattern. So that feels, I'm doing things that I can do, but it's also some way that I can tie quilting into growing hope continuously in the world, because we all know there's plenty of hope needed everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That's beautiful. And so we've got this idea of planting the worry and then allowing yourself to grow hope from that. So you kind of give a focus for that. What else have you been able to discover as you have been working through the pandemic and building because we all know that creativity really does fuel a
Mhm.
lot of inspiration, joy, and hope. What else have you been able to discover as you progress in our quilting journeys?
Well, when 2020 started, I began a quilt, which you can see behind me on this side, called my 2020 Miles Quilt. And so
Yeah.
this was pre-pandemic, but my plan was to tie quilting and running together to try to motivate myself to run more often.
Mhm.
And I had initially planned to train for my first full marathon. I'm I'm a lifelong not a runner because I was a swimmer in college, but being in rural Maine with three young kids, I've realized that running is my best chance at physical activity, and I've always been an athlete, and that serotonin boost really
Oh,
does a lot. And so this quilt was going when coronavirus started, and it was off to a great start. I had my races booked. When the pandemic hit, pretty much the only reason I kept running was
uh-huh.
because I was making this quilt and I was sharing about it. And I knew that if I waited too long, it would just go to the back burner and I wouldn't finish it. And so the fact that I had this quilt going helped me get out running on those days. Like again, I'm in rural Maine, so I'm running in deserted roads. I rarely pass anybody, let alone a car.
Yeah.
So it was safe. It was a safe way for me to have the only time alone.
Yes.
All 5 of us were home full time. And it also gave me that physical activity that was so essential to mental health during this really stressful summer.
Right.
And
Right.
so in realizing the power behind this quilt, that also was an inspiration for me to help share that process and the concept of quilting your life. And
Mhm.
so about 6 months into the pandemic, the first 6 months, I basically sewed trees, figured out my family, focused on surviving, the 5 of us, and minimizing impact the best I could. But 6 months in, we felt like we were getting into somewhat of a cycle. And
Mhm.
so I began to try and pick up the business side of my quilting as well. And so I started offering virtual workshops and lectures to
Oh,
guilds
good.
and self-hosted, because before the pandemic, I would travel to guilds to teach and taught at QuiltCon and that kind of thing. But once the pandemic hit, it was basically survival mode for the first 6 months. But then I started picking it up and have transitioned to teaching more virtually, both with guilds and self-hosted. And I'm in the process, the exciting, nervous stage of building a membership support group for those who are quilting their life, because
Oh, that's so
the
fun.
pandemic really helped me realize how wonderful it is to set up a positive feedback loop in life with
Mhm.
a positive habit or activity. So for me, that was running or exercising. I've done quilts or hiking, and I'm doing one now. I just started a week ago. I want to try to hike 40 mountains. I just turned 40. And
Oh,
so this
so
is
good.
my quilt for me. It's called the 40 Peaks quilt. And so I'm doing improv mountain peak blocks.
Yeah.
But just tying a positive thing that will feed me as a person together with quilting, which I love. And so it creates a positive feedback loop. So I'm really excited to develop that idea and help support others who are heading into that concept and celebrate their successes with them. So it's a really powerful practice.
Yeah. So tell people, because they're listening to this and like, I want to do the quilt my life. So first of all, tell us what ideas people are or coming to you with. And then secondly, how can they get involved in this really fun project?
Okay, so some ideas, if I'm hearing you right, some ideas people have done since my first workshop was late 2020, December. And so there are a number of people doing walking, running quilts similar to this one. We have quilts, someone is tracking all human powered miles. And so
Oh,
that's including uh, cross country skiing in the winter, snowshoeing, cycling, running, walking, hiking, all of those things. A few people were making quilts tracking the birds that they saw at their bird feeder, which was an exciting one.
that's fun.
Uh, People are making quilts tracking their mood, which is really helpful. Um, just noticing from the a standpoint apart from yourself, how is my mood in this particular day, and documenting it in a quilt block and learning from that. One woman is documenting taco consumption, which I think is really fun because she wanted to, see how she could fit more tacos into her day. And so from breakfast tacos to lunch tacos, it's really fun to see. Let's see, there are lots of pages read in books.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, I know for me, it's usually an active
Yeah.
exercise or hiking or adventurous, but it can be just self-care, something you need more of, but you don't necessarily always make time for or find time for.
Mhm.
And so people are tracking pages read or books read and that kind of thing. And to follow along with it, you can check, there are 2 hashtags that are used on Instagram and social media. One is Quilt Your Life. The next one is Milestone Quilt, because my project started as quilts marking milestones. You can follow me at Night Quilter, which is NIGHTQUILTER, and my website, nightquilter.com. Both share information on upcoming workshops, and when the membership is ready to roll, I
Yes.
will post about it on Instagram and my blog. And then in both of those spots, there's a spot to sign up for my newsletter as well.
Okay, that's perfect.
Lots of ways to stay in the loop.
Yeah, my husband, we bought this house 4 years ago. It had a hot tub in it and it was broken. And my husband finally fixed the hot tub in for my Christmas present. So as soon as you said that, I was like, how would I track my hot tub? Because like I love my hot tub so much. It is like when you talked about self-care. I mean, obviously I'm a life coach. I help work on our brains, but giving ourselves that time of like relaxation and actually relaxing has been such a game changer. I think, especially for us who are super creative, we tend to use our creativity as a relaxation, which is great. But and then you and I, like, I don't anymore with the quilting, but you, like, that's how you make your business. And so sometimes it's hard to relax from that part of it, because writing a pattern, when I wrote this my book, which is interesting, it's also called, it goes along with that theme, right? Walk, jog, run, for free motion quilting. That really was, I mean, to write a pattern is like a whole other story, like the technical parts to writing patterns, like the details. We do need to almost take a break from that. So, and
Definitely.
obviously you're going to be reflected in your quilt. So these sound really fun. Is there anything else that you want to share with people, especially when we talk about resilience? Resilience is like, how do we bounce back from difficulties? So is
Mhm.
there any other advice or things you want to just share with people of what you've learned about how resilient you really are and what the pandemic really has taught you?
I think that it reminds me of something I learned recently in parenting. A clip my husband shared that he saw on TikTok about parents, and I'll tie it back at the end, but parents always say, I wish I had more patience. And
Mhm.
so the premise of this TikTok message was, well, patience is an end product of knowledge. And I feel like resilience is a very similar thing. Like when you know what tools you need to support yourself and you know who you can go to when you need help,
Mhm.
or the different strategies that work for you, when you
Mhm.
have an outlet or a community to share with, whatever it is that works for you to process emotion and feel the emotion, that will then help you get through it, if
Right.
that makes sense. And
Totally.
so I feel like I remember hearing that quote and kind of having a mind blown moment, like, right, oh, I wish I had more patience. Well, patience is a result is an end product of knowledge. So
Right.
once you learn more about the developmental stage of children and that they're not really mad at you, or they're not trying to, it relates to other things as well. That resilience and the ability to work through hard things comes from knowledge, and it's an end product of knowledge. And so when you practice things that help you become more aware of yourself and learn tools like the ones I'm sure you share in your life
Yeah.
coach classes of how do you motivate yourself when you're feeling stuck, or how do you accept that today I'm feeling stuck but tomorrow I might not be, so today I'm going to sit and read a book, go in
Mhm.
the hot tub.
Right.
Every
Right.
hot tub, right? To just almost accept yourself where you are so that you are able to then move on.
Right, absolutely. And like one of my favorite tools, I talk about the 50-50 rule, where in order to have a well-balanced life, we
Mhm.
really need to embrace there's going to be negative
Right.
50% of our life and there's going to be positive 50%. But when we know that the negative 50 is there, we don't make a big deal of it. We don't overreact. We don't really stew on it. We're like, "Oh yeah, there's that 50 that's not so good." Process negative emotion, whatever it is. We don't, I mean, because I think about buffering. We buffer with our social media, like with apps or eating, because we're trying to avoid a negative emotion. But if we could just like actually be with a negative emotion, then it's like done. Okay, now let's keep moving.
Exactly.
So it's what I teach every day. So powerful. Well, this has been very interesting. This concept of quilting your life is so fun. And the fact that we can all go and buy the tree pattern and know that those funds, not only do they support you so that you can create more beautiful patterns, but that we know that it's going towards a cause that's going to help um, fellow humans. And this earth really is hurting. There's been a lot of struggle, a lot of things that have come from the pandemic. And so to know that we don't have to just sit around and wait for it to be finished. We can actually be proactive and create real change. That's very inspiring.
Yes, and we definitely can't just sit around. We have to be the change. Action is what will make change. And so
Absolutely.
I think it's really important to keep that in mind as well. But yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. This has been so fun. So everyone, you can go quilt your life. So the hashtags are hashtag quilt your life and milestone quilts.
Mhm.
Quilts with an S, right?
Like milestone quilt without an S, but
Oh, okay.
probably both.
Okay,
Like
I'll just say milestone quilt. And then,
milestone.
of course, I'm like writing it all down. Nightquilter.com.
Mhm.
Keep it simple. And so you are teaching classes. So quilt guilds, people can contact you to teach. You're doing it virtually now.
Yes.
So that's another way of learning more from Kitty. All right. Well, thank you for your time. This is so, so good. And I can't wait to see everyone else's, how they track their lives.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.